The failed policy of the former Prime Minister, Mr. Khan, who pushed us to negotiate with Afghan government. He brought them here.
DG ISPR accused PTI for three things: digital terrorism,
Political terrorism,
and physical terrorism, in terms of allowing TTP to come back, reinforce and retrench themselves in KPK. PTI desire Mr. Khan to emerge as Pakistan's Khomeini. Why they are seeking the US good offices to, make him into a Pakistani Khomeini?
I don't think Americans would be interested in any Khomeini-type revolution in Pakistan, but they would very much be interested if Pakistan could be denuclearized.
Do you really expect them to support and rescue an individual who's facing serious charges and cases in Pakistan?
I seriously doubt it. Richard Grenell.
So tell us more about him.
Well,
should we take him seriously?
Well, the way he has acted in his professional life, he should not be treated seriously. With a fresh episode of Weekend, which would be the last episode of 2024, I'm Murtaza Solangi.
And I'm Muhammad Ali.
Well, it looks like we have a plate full of agenda today.
Indeed, and it was a very eventful year, but not least this particular week. So what do you have on the agenda today?
Well, if you scan Pakistani news, the big name that pops up all over the place, be it legacy media, print, television, or social media, there is an American name that's popping up all over the place, somebody by the name of Richard Grenell.
So tell us, who is Richard Grenell and why he's getting so much attention?
Well, Pakistanis might not know him. Before President-designate Trump announced his name as a special envoy for troubled spots, and those troubled spots were named Venezuela and North Korea. But lo and behold, within no time, he was welcomed by PTI overseas, and they started tagging him on social media and asked him to intervene in Pakistani politics and pressurize Pakistan to release incarcerated Imran Khan.
So does that mean that PTI wants the incoming Trump administration to include Pakistan as a trouble spot?
They would want all kind of troubles in Pakistan. If you remember, much earlier than that, PTI actually during last PDM government, they tried to sabotage IMF agreement. There was a leaked phone call, audio tape, where the former finance minister, Shaukat Tareen, was talking to two finance ministers of the provinces where PTI was governing, Punjab, Mohsin Laghari, and Taimur. I'm forgetting his last name. The son-in-law, not son, I think grandson of former President Ghulam Isa Khan. I think his name is Taimur Jhagda, if I
Okay.
Remember his name right. So there was an audio tape where Mr. Shaukat Tareen is directing Finance Minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Finance Minister of Punjab to send a letter to IMF that we will not give our share of account surplus to the federal government, and we are not bound by the commitment federal government is making with you to scuttle IMF agreement. Then, if you remember, when the crisis erupted in Sri Lanka, Mr. Khan wished that we would have a situation like Sri Lanka in Pakistan, then Bangladesh. So this comes very natural. They sincerely believe that if there is a total meltdown in Pakistan, people will be out on the streets, and this will lead to collapse of all systems, and Mr. Khan would emerge as some kind of Khomeini, and a new dawn of his despotic rule would start.
When PTI desire Mr. Khan to emerge as Pakistan's Khomeini, why they are seeking the US good offices to make him into a Pakistani Khomeini?
Well, I have been thinking about it. I don't think Americans would be interested in any Khomeini-type revolution in Pakistan, but they would very much be interested if Pakistan could be denuclearized, because of the strategic partnership US has been building since civil nuclear deal, if you remember. They would very much want to appease Indians, and since they want to use India as a counterweight to China, so they would want a Pakistan that has no wherewithal to defend itself.
But in contrast to the US non-proliferation goals in South Asia, when one talks about the rising threat of terrorism, don't you think that Pakistan and US share a common concern regarding Afghanistan that has again become a hotbed for regional and global terrorism? But on one hand, PTI seeks US good offices to influence the legal and judicial processes that Mr. Khan is facing. But on the other hand, Mr. Khan seems to be a very devout and determined advocate of Taliban. And he has always forcefully advocated appeasement and dialogue rather than an effective counterterrorism strategy against them. How does that add up with whatever the US expects from Pakistan?
That's what I would like to understand myself. But the way Doha deal was struck, the way Americans left Afghanistan, abandoning everything, the effort of 2 decades, that whole experiment of Afghan Republic was sunk. The way people were thrown to Afghan Taliban, and there are hundreds of thousands of Afghans who can't go home.
Because there are thousands of people who were working for different non-governmental organizations which were supported by the US and Western governments, and they were just left high and dry.
So that probably explains that once you are out of Afghanistan, you don't give a hoot what happens to terrorism until and unless it comes and bites your butt. Pardon my French. I remember 9/11 days. There was a TV program on air, I think it was Fareed Zakaria, who said, remember, if you do not visit bad neighborhoods will visit you. That was the 9/11 experience. When you left it, after the withdrawal of Soviet troops, the Mujahideen experiment, the Taliban experiment, and you had characters of all sorts coming to Afghanistan, including Osama bin Laden. And look what happened next. So it looks like there's not a far-sighted approach of the US administration. Now, the wee hours of Biden administration, we will see, as Chinese say, interesting times are ahead in America. But we were talking about a guy named Richard Grenell.
So tell us more about him.
Well,
should we take him seriously?
Well, the way he has acted in his professional life, he should not be treated seriously because his antics have been hyperbolic and an effervescent kind of person. If you remember, in 2018, when he was sent as ambassador to Germany, he caused a ruckus there. He issued statements on Twitter siding the right-wing conservative political parties in Germany and infuriating the other side of the spectrum.
But he worked with stalwarts like Negroponte, Mr. Bolton, and Mr. Zalmay Khalilzad, none of whom have been approached by the Trump administration this time.
True. If you look at the list of people Mr. Trump has nominated for the cabinet positions, many of them are very controversial figures who have no experience. And some, like billionaire Elon Musk, he had appointed a designated Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, who had cupboard full of skeletons. His sex scandals and all these things popped up, and he had to withdraw his name. Even Mr. Grenell, when he was appointed ambassador, it took 18 months for the Senate to pass him for the position. And then he had to cut short his stint in 2 years. Then he was appointed acting director, national intelligence, and he ended up fighting with different intel agencies, and finally he quit. So he is known for that temperament.
But notwithstanding whoever is in White House, what is your view that you've lived and worked in Washington for a long time and you know their thinking and culture? Do you really expect them to support and rescue an individual who's facing serious charges and cases in Pakistan and is a devout advocate of Taliban and supports appeasement and dialogue with them instead of an effective counterterrorism strategy? Do you think such a person and with such an ideology would be considered a potential ally by the Trump administration?
I seriously doubt it, because Americans have not forgotten what happened to them in 9/11. Thousands of people perished in a moment. And it changed America from inside out. So a person who calls Osama bin Laden a martyr, who supports the so-called judicial system of Taliban, who somehow justifies the patriarchal anti-women culture of Taliban as their cultural tradition. The person who authorized around 300 million rupees per year to a seminary called Factory of Suicide Bombers and Jihadists, would be treated with respect in America for what Americans have gone through. I seriously doubt it. But since Mr. Khan happens to be in crosshair with Pakistan's security establishment, and if they want to twist the arm of Pakistani state on critical issues like nuclear program or missile program, they could use this issue as a pivot to pressurize Pakistan. Mr. Khan does not matter for America, but if they want to use him for some other pressure tactics, you never know.
And that brings me to another very important development which took place a few days ago, which is the concern that European Union, Britain, and US State Department showed regarding the military courts. What's your take on that?
I think it was a hasty comment by European Union and United States. Our military courts are a form of speedy trial. And France, UK, US have had many speedy courts in the past, including 2020 January 6 in Capitol Hill attack, twice in UK, in France. But what our military courts have just done, 85 people convicted, that's contingent upon final verdict of the Supreme Court. So those sentences are not final till Supreme Court finally allows it, and that is a sub judice matter. But unlike the previous military courts' verdicts, these 85 cases have an additional layer of protection to those accused by giving them all the means to defend themselves, cross-examination, etc. So instead of a quick verdict, guilty or innocent, they will have a full case detail with them. And none of them have been given death sentence. The maximum sentence announced so far is 10 years. In UK, France, and even in US, all those cases that I told you about, the sentences have been even much higher, over 10 years.
So today, the spokesperson of Pakistani Armed Forces was also asked this question at the press briefing, that whether the military courts meet the international standards and Pakistan's compliance with UN Charter and human rights record as well. And he believed and argued that, like you pointed out, military courts, despite having a military form, do provide whoever is the convicted person the right and opportunity to defend himself, to get himself a lawyer, to present facts and evidences and witnesses as well in defense, just like the civilian court, notwithstanding the fact that the convicted person reserves the right to file an appeal against the conviction at Superior Judiciary. So why is the Western community so worried and concerned about these military courts?
As I said, it's too hasty because these people have to have the opportunity to appeal to Army Chief. They have the opportunity to go to High Court. They have the opportunity to go to Supreme Court, and then they can even appeal to the President of Pakistan for pardon. But these verdicts are not final because they are contingent upon the final verdict of the Supreme Court.
So let's cut the long story short. Is this a diplomatic attempt to coerce Pakistan Army?
I would say so. But I think Pakistan has given a good response, and probably they would not talk much about it because there are still many things up in the air. As I said, these convictions are contingent upon the final decision of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. But people do forget that these 85 people who have been just sentenced are part of the long series of people who have been sentenced, civilians in military courts starting 1972, over 1,000 people so far. Even under 4-year period of Mr. Khan, there's over 100 people, civilians. The last batch of people who were convicted under Mr. Khan, that number was 29, all civilians, and 3 of them were given death sentence.
Indeed.
So nobody talked about it, as if they were children of lesser God.
So while Mr. Khan and his party seeks relief from the legal proceedings of the military court, they themselves use military court to convict some people charged with serious offenses and convicted them for death sentence as well.
And they don't have the nerve and courage to apologize. How come the sentences to civilians by military courts under their tenure were kosher, and when they used what was rightly called political terrorism by DG ISPR, and he gave a long list of those political violence starting 2014, when they occupied PTV, when they attacked Parliament, when they defaced Supreme Court for 126 days, then May 25, 2022, then November 2022, then May 9, 2023. Now, fast forward to November 24 through 26 here in Islamabad.
So did the US State Department, EU, and British Commonwealth Office express concern when people, including civilians, were convicted by the military court during Imran Khan's administration?
Pinch me and wake me up, because I don't remember such a thing.
Okay. Now let's move forward. I think the press conference was quite interesting and comprehensive. What else did you find interesting in the press conference?
Well, I think he was asked to comment on the statement of Mr. Khan, who yesterday, talking to reporters in Adiala jail, said that we are facing terrorism and terrible security situation in Pakistan, especially in the province that his party rules, because of a failed Afghan policy. And I think he said, Mr. Khan said that Pakistan should talk to TTP and Pakistan should talk to Afghan interim government to resolve this issue. The answer was very interesting. He said, well, we have been talking to Afghan government since 2021. And even recently, we have talked to them directly, as well as with the help of intermediaries, with the help of friendly countries. But so far, they continue harboring terror groups that attack Pakistan.
And that is something with the UN report
Yes.
on Afghanistan also acknowledged
Yes.
and expressed concern about.
But one thing important that he said that we are facing these mass casualties and hike in terrorism because of the failed policy of the former Prime Minister, Mr. Khan, who pushed us to negotiate with Afghan government, and after that everything would be hunky-dory. These TTP fighters would come and they would be selling probably ice cream on the streets. He brought them here, and now we are facing the music. So, take the blame where it belongs.
So basically, DG ISPR accused PTI for three things: digital terrorism,
Political terrorism,
and physical terrorism, in terms of allowing TTP to come back, reinforce and retrench themselves in KPK.
If you remember, I had told you in one of our shows, when there were negotiations with Afghan Taliban and TTP under Mr. Khan, he agreed with them not only the rehabilitation of the thousands of those militant fighters, but also a process of reversal of FATA merger to give an area to all these militant groups, including Al-Qaeda. So that explains the mindset of Mr. Khan. So when we call him jihadi in genes, both the blue genes and GENES, what we are talking about.
And it is also very interesting that the Prime Minister of Pakistan also reinforced
Yes.
what DG ISPR said today at the
Yes.
press conference at a superior, higher level forum, that with regard to Afghanistan, talks and terrorism cannot
go
go on
together.
simultaneously.
Can't go together.
And both these high-level statements from the political and the military leadership came a couple of days after our newly appointed special envoy on Afghanistan, Ambassador Sadiq, visited Kabul.
He's a veteran.
He knows Afghanistan very well.
Yes, and he has good connections. He understands the processes in Afghanistan. He knows people. I think it's a great appointment. And he will make Afghans understand that, pick between TTP and Pakistan. You can't have both.
Indeed. I think he's probably one of the best that we have, and he knows Afghanistan very well. And Afghans also trust and respect him. So I hope he rises to the challenge of managing this difficult episode of Pak-Afghan relations. And with these few words, I think we've exhausted the time for us. And viewers, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a very eventful and interesting year. I hope you enjoyed joining us in this show. Keep watching us, and don't forget to give your feedback on these programs. Thank you so much.